Hello everyone, how are you doing today? Happy New Year. In today's video, I will be talking about some advanced concept when it comes to making your own custom node. So we can call it as advanced custom nodes. However, do know that most of the concepts are mainly for Python. As long as you know Python, you will be able to create any custom nodes in the backend. When it comes to the front end side of things, you will require Canvas HTML API, a little bit of CSS, JavaScript, mainly Node.js. And if you do have those knowledge, you will be able to make a good front end. In today's video, I will be covering the back end side of things. So the Python custom node back end. I want to take a moment to say a big thank you to Sebastian Anthony, who is my first patron on Patreon and joined the Discord team. Big thank you to you, Sebastian. Your support means a lot, and welcome to the community. I am also using the Patreon as a blog post. I do not have a personal website, and I find it easier to manage on Patreon. So if you'd like to see the different experimentation, testing, and what is happening in the community, you can go into the Patreon. At the top, I have a join for free button, and this will give you access to the free blog post. With that, let's get started with today's video, and it does come with a few requirements. So the first requirement for today's video is to watch this video here, create your own custom node in ComfyUI. This video acts as an introductory video to how custom nodes work. I also explain how the example node, which comes built in with ComfyUI, and break it down into its individual components. I also show you how you can join the positive and negative prompt and make a single custom node with it. If you find any difficulty when following along today's video, go back and watch this video. I will also be talking about some advanced concept in Python, and I will be using the Pathlib library for today's project. In case you have any difficulty, navigate to the Python documentation, and you will find extensive documentation on how to use the Path library. I will not be able to cover everything. I will only cover the essentials, which I will be using in today's video. And like I mentioned before, I will only cover the Python backend and not the front end with HTML, the Canvas, CSS, and JavaScript. Let's begin by going into the File Explorer. Navigate to your ComfyUI installation where you have your run NVIDIA_GPU file. In there, you will see that there is a ComfyUI folder. Go into that folder. Inside it, there will be a custom nodes folder. Enter the folder. And if you install additional custom nodes, you will see folders like this. If you have not installed any custom node, then you will only have one file, which says example_node.py.example. Now, in case you do not have the example file, or if you've deleted the file, or maybe you've used it and done some modification, let me show you how you can get the file back. I'm going to delete everything in my custom nodes folder. Then I will go back once, click on the back button again to reach the folder where we have the run NVIDIA GPU. In here, we have an update folder. Open it, and we are going to have two files, the update comfyui.bat file, as well as the Python dependencies one. Double click and open the update_comfyui.bat file. This will update your ComfyUI to the latest version, as well as download any missing files. Once it's done, you will see press any key to continue. You can press enter and then navigate back to the custom nodes folder. You should see example_node.py.example. Now, when we are talking about advanced custom node, we are mainly going to focus on having a module, and all of our custom nodes will be within that module. So we need to tell ComfyUI to load all of these custom nodes. To do that, we'll have to structure our project a little bit differently compared to when we only had one file. I'm going to click on the new button here. If you are using a different file explorer, then find the new button or right click and select from the context menu. I will select folder. And for today's video, I'm going to name it as tutorial. If you want to follow along to have the best experience, I recommend using tutorial. And once you practice a little bit, then you can go ahead and start creating your own folders. Select the example node.py.example, press Ctrl C to copy. You can right click and select this icon here to copy, or you can select the file and click on the copy button at the top. Go into the tutorial folder and then click on the paste icon, or you can press Ctrl V or right click and select paste from the menu. Once you have the file in, you can rename the file by pressing F2 on your keyboard, or you can click on this button here. You can also right click and select rename from the menu. Remove the dot example at the end, accept the confirmation, and you will get a Python file. Now, in my case, I can double click on the file to open Visual Studio Code. But if you have a different text editor, if you're using Notepad, Notepad++, Sublime, or any of the text or code editor, open the folder inside your editor. Now, in Visual Studio Code, I will have to click on this icon here, which stands for Explorer, and then click on the Open Folder option. Because I'm double-click on the file, Visual Studio Code has navigated me directly into the tutorial folder. If that is not the case for you, select the tutorial folder, then press on Select Folder. This will load the folder here on the left side. Next, I'm going to click on this icon here to create a new file, and I will name the file as init_.py. You need to make sure that your file is this exact name. This file will serve as the main entry point for our project. So when ComfyUI will load up, it will first check for this file, and whatever we put in here will get loaded as custom node. So as an example, we are going to load this example node using the init file. Go into example node, scroll all the way down where you have the mappings, select all of it, press Ctrl X to cut. You can also right click and select cut, or you can go into edit and cut. Then go into the init file and paste everything there. Now at this point, you may get an error saying that example is not defined or does not exist, which is true in this case because example is a class which is defined within the example_node.py file. However, we are inside the init file right now and we are referring to it. In order to make this work, we'll have to go all the way to the top, make some spaces, and then do from dot example node import example. The dot in front of example is very important because we are telling ComfyUI to look into the current directory, find any file with the name of example_node, look into the file, and then find the class example and give a reference to it in the init file here, which we are then using here into the mapping. Okay, at this point, you can press Ctrl S to save, go into File and Save. So you can go back into your ComfyUI Root folder, double click on the Run NVIDIA GPU.bat file, or you can open a terminal and run the NVIDIA GPU from there. Now going back into the terminal, we can see that our tutorial project was loaded successfully. If you see around here, if it says import failed, it means that you made a mistake somewhere in the code. Possible that this top import statement is not correct, or there are missing brackets. It's also possible that you did not put in the example file, instead you've copied. In that case, just remove the mapping section in here. So your init file should be like this, and then the example file from the top should be like this. We have the class example, the method inside it, return types, function, and then at the bottom, we do not have any of the mappings. So I hope you are able to follow along until this point. Let's continue on. Let's start with the first project where we are going to have a folder. This folder will contain some models. In this case, I'm just going to create some dummy files to represent the models, but you can take it as IP adapters. IP adapters custom node have their own custom models, which needs to be loaded inside of ComfyUI. and they usually reside within the custom node folder itself. So we're going to do something similar to this. And these models will need to be loaded inside of ComfyUI so that we have access to it when we are creating the workflows. Let's see how we can load some files from the operating system into ComfyUI. So for that, I will be using the Pathlib library. You can also use the OS library in Python. The OS library gives a functional approach, while the Pathlib gives a class-based approach, object-oriented approach. And since we are working with a class here, I've chose to go with the Pathlib library. So inside the example underscore node.py file, make some spaces at the top to from Pathlib import path with a capital letter P. This comes built in within Python. You do not have to install any additional modules for this. Now, to see how the Pathlib works, make some spaces again before the class example line. And I'm going to do a print statement where I will do path.cwd and then round brackets. So this path here refers to the class that we've imported at the top. And then within this class, there is a method called CWD, which stands for current working directory. And because it's a method, we need to add these parentheses inside. And then all I am doing is printing on the console the output that we'll get from here. This will tell us what is the current directory that we have access to in this particular file. So although this file is within our tutorial folder, and this tutorial folder is inside the custom nodes folder, which in turn is inside the ComfyUI folder, and then this ComfyUI is inside the root folder. We are invoking path.current working directory here at this point, and let's see the output. So make sure to save the file, Control S to save. If you have an existing ComfyUI server running, you can close out of it, or you can press Control C, type in Y, press Enter, and then do run NVIDIA gpu.bat file again. Now, once again, we can see that the tutorial folder was loaded correctly, but at the same time, we have a new line here, which is pointing toward my root ComfyUI directory. So although this line is inside the example node, inside the tutorial folder, ComfyUI thinks that we are within the root folder. And that is because ComfyUI also needs an entry point, and the entry point is within the root folder here. This means that everything that we do will have to be based off this root folder. We cannot directly call out that we want to go into tutorial folder and then into models. We have to go into the root folder, ComfyUI, custom nodes, tutorial, and then from here we can go into models. If you have any other custom nodes which you want to load, any text file, images, videos, all of that will follow the same pattern. Now, of course, because this is Python, there are multiple ways of doing the same thing. I am just showing you one way on how you can approach this problem. Let's go into the example node. We can remove the print statement, and then at the top, I will say base directory as a variable. I will point this towards the path.current working directory, which we now know is the root folder. Then, because this example is about loading models, I'm going to call another variable as models, and I will use this base directory, which is the root folder, and this path library at the top has a method called join path, which allows us to join multiple paths together to form one path. So you can see the example here, and you can read more on it on the documentation side. I will have this reference here so that you can visualize what is happening. I'm taking the root folder here, which is the base there. I'm joining it with ComfyUI. So inside here, I will type in ComfyUI. This name has to be exactly like in the file explorer. If the C is capital, you write in C capital, U and I all capital. U and I will be capital here. Otherwise, we are not going to find that folder. It is case sensitive. Now, do a comma. The next folder that we need to go into is custom nodes. I need to do custom nodes. Then the next folder is tutorial. And then in here, I can point to any folder within my tutorial folder. I'm just going to make a folder here called models. So on the left side here, in order to create this models folder, I will go and click on this new folder option, and I will name it exactly like what I type in here. Okay, now I have this models folder. Inside the models folder, I would right click, click on new file, and I would just name it model_1.saveTenses. This is just to simulate that we have a model save tenses file within this folder. Of course, this is just a text file right now. It's not a real model file. So I've created 4 of these dummy files and just name it model1, model2, model3, and model4.saveTenses file. This is just for the example. In a real case, we are going to have a real model file in there. So next, I'm just going to create a dummy variable here called my models, and I will need to get access to individual models that we have here. So we can do this using a list comprehension. Let me explain it how it's going to work. So right now we have the base dirt, which is a path object. When we do the join path and join all of these folders, we get back a path object. We can take this path object. There is a method on it called glob, which is basically going to go in and look for all the files that we have within this folder. And I know that I'm looking for save tenses file here. I'm going to put an asterisk, which means can be anything, any name, dot save tenses. So the asterisk means that the name can be anything. The extension will have to be save tenses. Now, this line here will return a Python generator. And as it is, we cannot use the generator object directly inside of the example class. We'll have to convert it into a list and then pass that list into our input types in order to get access to it within the web interface. So to convert this line into a list, we are going to loop through all the items in it. I'm going to say for file in, and because we want the individual file at the beginning, we'll do file, and this entire expression has to be inside a list. So I'm going to go in the beginning, put a square bracket, at the end, close the square bracket. This line here in Python, it's known as a list comprehension. You can use a traditional for loop to do the same thing, but at the end, what you want to have is some variable name, which is a list of all the items that we want to have. Okay, so right now, if we take this model and we put it inside of our class example, it's not going to work because we are working with the path module. The path library will always return a path object. So when we get this file here, this file as well is a path object. If we put the path object inside the input types, it doesn't know how to display it within this ComfyUI field here. What we want to have is when we click on this button, we want a list that says model 1, model 2, model 3, and so on. So all of these are text, and text in Python is represented as strings. So we'll have to convert this file object into a string. And all we do is type in str, short for string, then put the object that we want to convert inside the round brackets. Now, if this part was a little bit complicated, do not worry. Regardless of whether you want to load save tenses or txt file, images, videos, they will all work the same way. All you need to do is change this part here to whatever extension you are trying to load. Okay, so a quick recap here. We started in this root directory. This is the line that is defining it. And then we've joined or concatenated some path. Going from root, we join with ComfyUI, join with custom nodes, with the tutorial, and then with the model. Now, at this point, this line here, we are inside this model folder. Since we are inside the model folder, we can look for all the save tenses file and then put all of them inside a list. And because they are path object, we are converting it into strings so that we can load it inside the class example. Okay, I hope this was clear and you were able to follow along. Next, I'm going to go into the input types. And right now, this example node, if I save it, no need to follow along here. If I go clear my canvas, right click, add node, example node, I can see that it is taking an image as input, integer field, float field, print screen, as well as string field as inputs. Now, we want only one input, and that is just a drop down, similar to this. Going back into the code, I will have to remove everything that is within the required dictionary. So remove everything from image all the way to a string field, and we'll have to find the closing bracket to it. So we have a round bracket here, and then it ends here. So all of this will go, and we'll end up with just a return statement, which has a start curly bracket, end curly bracket, required, the opening curly bracket, and close curly bracket. Okay, now, since I'm working with files here, I'm just going to name mine as files. You can name it anything. And in order to get the list, we need to have a tuple or a tuple. To do this, we put in the round brackets. Inside, we need to have a list. So if we were doing this manually, I would put the square brackets. Inside it, I will do file1, then file2, and so on. And because we already have our list here at the top under my models, I'm going to copy the name, Control-C, go all the way down, replace this placeholder list with my models list. And then, because this is a tuple, we need to end it with a comma to tell Python that this is in tuple. Click on save, scroll a little bit down. In order for all of this to work, anything that is within the input types required will have to be passed on to the test function here. I talk about this, how all of this work in my previous video. So if you are having difficulty here, please check out the previous tutorial. I'm going to remove everything and replace it with files. So this name here will have to go here. Now, of course, the functionality, I do not have real models to load, so I'm just going to use print statements to load the file. Click on save, go into files, save, and then restart ComfyUI. Again, always check your terminal to see if you have any errors. In this case, there's no errors. I'm going to reload the web UI and click on clear, right click, add node, example node. Resizing the custom node, we can see that we have a list that tells us that we have model 1, 2, 3, and 4. All of them were loaded. Hope you get the point that we are going from the root folder to a custom folder and then loading some files and passing that on like this in order to get a list in the web UI. Now, similarly, we can go on the top and we can just change this to JPEG or PNG. And if you're doing any animation, so you can have a folder here with some images, in this case, image1 and image2.png. Now, because I'm inside the images folder, we'll have to change this to images, and then the rest is pretty much the same. We are going through the base folder or the root folder, joining the base folder with all of these folders, making sure that we are getting the full path or the absolute path to these images. And then inside the function, you can have some functionality, which is importing these images, loading the images, and do any conversion, joining them together, and preparing those images for your animation sequence. Now, as a last example, what you can have is text file. So here I've created a folder called styles. Inside it, I have 2 text files, 1 background, 1 color, and the same thing applies. We go here, we change this to styles, which is the folder here. Then we are looking for text file. Inside color, I can have red, blue, and green. Inside background, I can do sky, the city. In here, I will be able to select between color and background, which I'm loading here. And then based on what I've selected, I can do some Python manipulation. So I can import random. I can also open the file with open the file here. I can do something like that. This will return a list. and I can do a random choice on this list to get back a random color or a random background. And then I can have a custom node that will create a variable prompt. So I can have a variable, let's say underscore color. Whenever I have underscore color, it just replaces it with a random color based on what we've chosen from here. Now, of course, you're not going to import random from here. You would import random at the top because you do not want to import random every time we click on the Q prompt. Just import the package once and then use it as many times as you want. That's the best practice and it's more efficient. Now, of course, there's a lot to cover when it comes to custom nodes, and it's basically based on your imagination and how well you have mastered the Python programming language. Let me know if you have any difficulties, if this particular video was too difficult to follow along. Now, this section may be slightly complicated, but if you copy and paste this in any of your custom node and just change these two values, you should be able to load files, images, videos, or any models from a custom node folder into your custom node file. Now, of course, the functionality will depend on what you are trying to achieve in your custom node. With that, I think it's a good stepping point. I would like to say a big thank you to all of you who supported the channel last year, continuing this year. Big thank you to all of you guys. Thank you. Have a nice day. I will see you in the next one.